What if the person who's supposed to love you the most becomes your greatest enemy? I lived my entire life chasing a mother's approval that never came, trapped in a cycle of impossible expectations and silent suffering. Then, just when I thought I'd found happiness, she tore it all apart with lies and manipulation. I used to believe my mom was just doing her best, that she was strict because she wanted the best for me, that maybe one day all my hard work would finally be enough, that if I just pushed a little harder, studied a little longer, folded the towels just the way she liked, she might smile at me, not with that cold mechanical twitch of her lips but with warmth, real pride. But that moment never came. My name's Catherine. I'm an only child. My mother raised me alone, and when people say single mothers are heroes, I don't disagree. But in my case, my mother didn't raise a daughter. She forged a project, a reflection, a second chance for everything she believed life robbed her of. I wasn't allowed to be lazy even for a second. Every moment of my childhood was scheduled. School, chores, extracurriculars, private lessons, test prep, cooking, cleaning, more cleaning. I didn't have friends over. I didn't go to birthday parties. While other girls played or rested, I scrubbed the kitchen grout or recited science definitions. And if I ever tried to say I was tired, she'd look at me with those sharp eyes and say, "I'm the one who's tired, Catherine. I gave up everything for you." Yes, she gave me everything: food, clothes, even books and a laptop for studying. But not a single hug when I cried. Not a single "I'm proud of you" when I brought home perfect grades. Just a raised eyebrow and a cold, "Could have been better." Every achievement was met with a higher bar, a colder stare. She never yelled. That would have been easier. She was calm, precise, always guilt-wielding like a scalpel. If I dared to dream for myself, she reminded me how ungrateful I was. She'd talk about all the nights she didn't sleep, how she worked overtime to feed me, how I was her only purpose in life, and if I didn't succeed, then what was all her sacrifice for? I grew up thinking love was something you earn. That worth is conditional. And no matter how hard I tried, I never seemed to earn it. But I kept trying. By the time I was in college, I had learned how to function on autopilot. Straight A's, perfect attendance, volunteering, internships, tutoring. Anything to stack up achievements that might finally tip the scales and make her proud. But no matter what I did, she always found a flaw. "You only got an A-? What were you doing instead of studying? You're wasting time with those campus events. Do you think that'll pay the bills? Why are you so slow?" At your age, I was already working 2 jobs and didn't complain. I remember sitting in my dorm room one night, feeling completely hollow. My classmates went home for the holidays. I stayed behind, not because I wanted to, but because home never felt like home. Just a place where I owed someone everything and received nothing in return. When I graduated, with honors by the way, she came to the ceremony. But even that day, she didn't say, "I'm proud of you." Instead, she commented on how cheap my shoes looked in the photos. Still, I got a job. A good one. I worked hard, moved up quickly. My bosses praised me, coworkers relied on me. For the first time, I felt seen, valuable. But my mother saw my success differently. "You wouldn't have this job if it weren't for me," she said. "I gave you everything. You owe me." She didn't ask me to move back in. She demanded it. "It's the least you can do for your mother." I said I needed space. She guilted me, made me feel like a monster for even thinking of leaving her alone. So I stayed. I worked full-time, paid most of the bills, did the cooking and cleaning, and on weekends she'd be out with her friends posting spa photos and brunches on Facebook like she was living the dream. People commented how lucky she was to have such a devoted daughter. I wanted to scream. Every time I hinted at moving out again, she'd fall ill, or start crying, or say things like, "I knew you'd leave me eventually. After everything I did for you." The guilt would come rushing back like a tidal wave. And I'd back down. Again. I didn't realize it then, but I was trapped in a prison made of obligations. One where the lock was love I never received, and the key was guilt I never earned. It was a Saturday. I was coming back from the supermarket, arms full of groceries, mind completely fried from another endless week. I was so exhausted that I barely looked when I stepped off the curb in the parking lot. That's when I almost got hit by a car. Luckily, it was barely moving, just pulling into a space. The driver slammed on the brakes, rolled down the window, and ran out to check on me. "Hey, are you okay?" You didn't hit your head or anything, did you? He asked, genuinely concerned. I was so used to people ignoring me unless they needed something, I didn't even know how to react to kindness like that. I stammered something about being fine and apologized. He didn't just nod and drive off like most would. He insisted on walking me to a bench nearby and offering me some water from his gym bag. His name was Martin, and for some reason he sat beside me and started talking. He wasn't pushy, just kind, calm, the opposite of what I was used to. We ended up talking for over an hour about books, random life stuff, and somehow it felt like I could breathe again. For the first time in a long time. Before we parted ways, he asked if I'd be open to grabbing dinner sometime. I froze. Not because I didn't want to, but because no one had ever asked me that, not in a way that felt sincere. I hesitated, and he must have sensed it because he added softly, "Only if you want to. No pressure." I said yes. We started seeing each other slowly, cautiously. He was respectful, funny, warm. We'd go on walks, talk for hours, grab coffee after work. He listened when I spoke, and he never made me feel like I was too much or not enough. He liked me for who I was, even when I didn't quite know who that was myself. I started smiling more, sleeping better. For the first time, I imagined a future that didn't revolve around serving someone else. But of course, that's when my mother found out. I hadn't told my mother about Martin. Not at first. I knew how she'd react. But keeping anything from her was nearly impossible. She had a sixth sense when something in my routine changed, and when I came home late a few evenings in a row, her suspicions ignited. One night over dinner she casually asked, "So who's the man?" I paused, fork in midair. "I saw a message pop up on your phone. Martin, was it? Are you really wasting your time on some random man instead of focusing on your job and helping me?" I didn't answer right away. That was mistake number one. She always took hesitation as defiance. From that moment on, everything changed. Suddenly, she needed more money for emergencies. The wardrobe was falling apart. The washing machine was making strange noises. The house wasn't livable. She made it clear. If I had the time and money to date, I certainly had time and money to take care of my mother. So I paid. And I cleaned. And I still saw Martin, but now it was under a cloud of guilt. I tried to balance both worlds, but the tighter I held on, the more she pressed. Then came the subtle jabs. "You think someone like him actually wants you? He's just being nice. Don't be stupid. He'll get bored. He'll see the real you soon enough. You really think a man like that falls for a woman who lives with her mother? You're embarrassing." I brushed it off at first. I told Martin I was just stressed with work. I didn't want him to know how toxic things were at home. I was afraid if he saw the truth, he'd walk away. But he didn't. In fact, he held my hand tighter. He encouraged me to move out, to put myself first. I started dreaming again. Looking up small apartments, even picking out furniture on Pinterest. For the first time it felt possible. And then my mother escalated. When guilt didn't stop me, and her shaming didn't work, my mother moved into new territory. Sabotage. First it was little things. Comments here and there to Martin when he came by to pick me up. "Oh, you're still around? I thought Catherine would have scared you off by now." Or, "She's always been a little clingy, you know. Needs constant reassurance." Martin would laugh awkwardly, brush it off, and we'd move on. But I saw the look in his eyes. Confused, a little uncomfortable. I reassured him that my mom was just old-fashioned or joking, even when I knew she wasn't. I was too ashamed to admit the truth. She was planting seeds. And they were starting to take root. Then the messages started. Martin would get screenshots from fake accounts, anonymous DMs with twisted stories, that I was using him, that I had a history of unstable behavior, that I was talking to other men behind his back. First he showed them to me and we laughed. Who would believe this? But the stories got more elaborate. More personal. Whoever it was seemed to know private things. Like the fact that I'd taken out a credit card to help cover some of my mother's expenses. Or that I'd once cried to Martin about feeling like a burden. These weren't random rumors. They were weapons built from my own confessions. Martin started pulling away just a little at first. He didn't call every night. He canceled dinner plans more often. And when I asked what was wrong, he'd say, "Nothing, just tired." Until one day he confronted me. He sat across from me at a cafe, eyes heavy. "Catherine, Is there something you're not telling me? I blinked. What do you mean? I don't know. Just the things people have been saying. It's getting to me. I laughed nervously, my stomach twisting. Martin, it's all fake. You know me. He hesitated. Do I? That moment broke something in me. I went home that night, locked myself in the bathroom, and cried until I was shaking. When I finally emerged, my mother was waiting in the hallway. She looked me up and down and said, I told you. He doesn't care about you. You should have listened to me. And then she walked away. After that conversation with Martin, things unraveled fast. We stopped going on walks. He stopped texting good morning. When we did see each other, it felt like we were tiptoeing through a minefield of unspoken doubts. I tried everything to hold us together. Cooked his favorite meals, sent long, vulnerable messages, begged him to talk to me. But something had shifted. And I knew exactly who had shifted it. I confronted my mother. I asked her outright if she'd been behind the rumors, the fake messages, the strange online accounts. She acted stunned, offended even. How could you accuse your own mother of something so disgusting? She said, tears in her eyes. After everything I've done for you? This is the thanks I get? She cried for hours. Slammed doors. Didn't eat dinner. And then, like clockwork, made me feel like the villain. I apologized. Again. Even though I knew deep down I was right. Meanwhile, Martin kept his distance. I could see the conflict on his face, like he wanted to believe me, but something inside him couldn't. Or wouldn't. One night, after another tense, hollow dinner together, he looked at me and said, I'm sorry, Catherine. I don't know what to believe anymore. I think we need space. Space. That word destroyed me. He left. And I broke. I stopped sleeping. My body ached constantly. I was barely eating, dragging myself through work, then coming home to a mother who looked triumphant and disappointed at the same time. You see, she said when I came home sobbing. I told you. He was just using you. You wasted time, money, and energy on a man who never truly cared. While I've been here, always. That was the night I collapsed in the shower. I don't remember much. Just that everything started spinning, and the water felt ice cold even though it was hot. I woke up in a hospital bed with IVs in my arm, a nurse writing something on a clipboard, and this deafening silence in my head. They said it was severe stress and physical exhaustion. Honestly, I was surprised I hadn't gotten there sooner. But what I didn't know then was that everything was about to come to light. The hospital was quiet, the kind of quiet that makes you hear your own thoughts too clearly. I was there for observation, stress-related breakdown, severe fatigue, dehydration. The nurses were kind, but I could tell they felt sorry for me. And I hated that. I didn't want pity. I wanted answers. I wanted my life back. It was a couple days into my stay when it happened. I was sitting up in bed staring out the window when a nurse came in to check my vitals. Her name tag read Alicia. She was friendly and soft-spoken, probably around my age. As she adjusted my I overheard her on the phone with someone. I told him, Martin, you have the worst luck with women, she said, chuckling. First that drama with the sweet one, Catherine, right? The one who turned out to be some obsessive psycho? I froze. I didn't even breathe. I couldn't. She seemed so quiet and kind, Alicia continued, still unaware I was listening. But all those fake profiles, the stalking? He was crushed. I felt like the ground dropped out from under me. When she hung up, I sat there trembling. My voice was barely a whisper when I asked, Martin, is your brother? She blinked and nodded slowly, realizing what she'd just said. Oh my God. You're Catherine? There was a long, painful silence. I could see the color drain from her face. And then I asked the question that changed everything. Where did he hear those things? Who told him I was like that? Alicia sat down on the edge of the chair beside me. Her face softened. He got screenshots, emails, messages, all from someone who said they knew you, said they were looking out for him. I asked if she could describe them, and the moment she said, it was all sent from a woman's account, someone claiming to be a distant aunt or family friend, my heart sank. Because I knew. I just knew. It was her. My mother. She didn't just poison our relationship with manipulation and guilt. She actively destroyed it behind my back. She had created fake accounts, sent lies, fabricated stories, all while looking me in the eyes every day and pretending to be the concerned parent. The horror of it hit me in waves. My whole body went cold. I couldn't speak, couldn't cry, just lay there, realizing that my worst suspicions hadn't even scratched the surface of how deep her betrayal ran. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel guilt. I felt rage. After Alicia left the room, everything felt surreal, like I'd been living in someone else's life this whole time. A twisted version of The Truman Show directed by my own mother. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. I kept replaying every moment of my relationship with Martin, every fight, every shift in his tone. I remembered every time my mother casually asked about him, how she'd tilt her head and pretend she was curious when she was really collecting ammunition. And all the while, she was behind the scenes with fake profiles and lies designed to destroy me. I felt humiliated, violated, alone. The next morning, I broke down in front of the hospital therapist assigned to check in with me. Her name was Dr. Harrison, and when she gently asked, "What brought you here, Catherine?" I cracked. I told her everything, from childhood until now. I told her how hard I tried to be good, how my mother made me feel like I was never enough, how she used guilt like a leash, how she ruined the only thing in my life that felt like mine, Martin. And then I told her about Alicia, about what I'd learned. Dr. Harrison didn't flinch. She listened like no one ever had. Not with pity, not with judgment, with focus, with understanding. When I finished, she said, "Catherine, what you're describing isn't just emotional abuse. The psychological warfare. What your mother has done isn't just wrong. It's criminal." Criminal. That word felt heavy, but it also felt right. Dr. Harrison recommended I continue therapy with her after my discharge. She also said something that stayed with me. "You were taught to believe love is earned through suffering, but love doesn't require you to destroy yourself." Before I left the hospital, she handed me the name of a lawyer. Grace Klein. A woman who specialized in coercive control, family manipulation, and psychological abuse cases. She said Grace could help me understand my legal options and maybe finally help me break free. For the first time in my life, I realized I had a right to protect myself. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't selfish. I wasn't ungrateful. I was a daughter who had been lied to, controlled, and emotionally imprisoned for decades. And I was finally ready to fight back. Meeting Grace was like a breath of fresh air. She didn't just listen. She took action. The first thing she asked me was to document everything. Every conversation, every demand, every guilt trip, every payment I'd made to my mother, every message, every strange incident that felt off. She said these details would be my strongest weapon. I started keeping a journal, jotting down dates and times, quotes, emotions. I scoured my emails and texts, gathering screenshots of my mother's manipulations. I even dug into the bills and bank statements to track every dollar I'd sent her. Then Grace suggested something I hadn't dared to consider: checking my mother's computer. I was terrified, but I had to know. When I accessed her laptop, while she was out, my heart dropped. There, in a folder ominously named "For the Future," were files and screenshots she'd saved for years. Fake social media profiles, detailed plans to keep me dependent, transcripts of conversations she'd recorded without my knowledge. Worse, there were documents where she'd written about me in the worst possible ways, lying, accusing, predicting failure. It was like she was preparing ammunition to use against me if I ever tried to leave. Grace told me this was powerful evidence. It showed premeditation, psychological abuse, and manipulation on a level that could stand up in court. I was horrified, but I also felt stronger. For the first time, I had proof. When we went to court, Grace helped me present everything clearly. I was nervous, but every page, every screenshot, every payment I could show chipped away at my mother's mask of innocence. The judge didn't hesitate. The verdict was in my favor. I was free. The day I moved out was the day I truly started living. I packed my bags while my mother was out, quietly, quickly, like I was sneaking out of a prison. I rented a small apartment in a different part of the city. It wasn't much, but it was mine. I disconnected my bank accounts from hers and stopped answering her calls. The guilt was like a shadow following me everywhere. But I was done letting it control me. First, she was furious. The text came fast and furious. "Ingratitude. How could you abandon your mother after all I've done? Don't expect me to help if you fall." She tried everything to pull me back in: manipulation, threats, begging. But none of it worked anymore. I was finally building walls strong enough to keep her out. Therapy with Dr. Harrison became my anchor. She helped me unpack decades of self-doubt and taught me how to trust my own feelings, to listen to my needs first. Martin never came back. We met briefly once near the hospital, after I was discharged. He told me he'd learned about everything from mutual friends and wished things could be different, but he understood why I needed space. I realized then that if someone doubts you so easily, maybe they aren't the one you're meant to be with. Slowly, I started saying yes to myself. I signed up for yoga classes, started reading novels just for fun, and allowed myself to dream without shame. It wasn't easy. Every day was a battle against old fears and ingrained guilt. But I was learning that love, real love, starts with loving yourself. Even after the court ruled in my favor and I'd moved out, my mother didn't give up. If anything, her fury intensified. She called me nonstop. Texts flooded my phone. Accusations, insults, sob stories. She showed up unannounced at my apartment once, banging on the door, demanding to be let in. When I refused, she called me heartless and ungrateful. Friends and coworkers started noticing. Some asked if I was okay, noticing my tense smiles and quiet exhaustion. I felt torn between wanting to explain and the fear that talking would only bring more pain. But the difference now was that I had boundaries. I blocked her calls when necessary. I told my friends some of the truth so I had a support network. And most importantly, I reminded myself that none of her words defined me. Therapy sessions were tough. Some days I wanted to give in just to end the fight. But Dr. Harrison helped me understand that my mother's rage was about control, not love. One breakthrough came when I realized that her attempts to break me were a reflection of her own pain and failure, not mine. I was learning to separate her cruelty from my worth. It was still a struggle, but for the first time I felt powerful, not because of what I did, but because of who I was. After months of therapy and rebuilding my life, I finally started to feel like I was reclaiming my identity. For years, I'd lived in the shadow of my mother's expectations and manipulation. Now I was stepping into the light. Dr. Harrison helped me recognize the toxic patterns that had shaped me and taught me how to listen to my own voice. I began journaling honestly about my feelings, hopes, and fears. I learned to say no to her, to guilt, to old habits. It wasn't perfect. I still struggled with self-doubt. Sometimes a stray comment or a memory would send me spiraling. But each time I reminded myself, I am worthy. I deserve respect. I deserve love. I reconnected with friends I'd lost touch with and even made new ones. I started volunteering at a local community center, finding joy in helping others without expectation. Slowly, life began to feel like mine. Martin was still out of the picture. We had a brief conversation after my hospital stay, and while there was kindness, the trust was broken. I realized that if he could believe lies about me so easily, maybe he wasn't the right person to hold my heart. And that was okay. I was learning that my worth wasn't tied to anyone's approval. Not my mother's, not Martin's, not anyone's. I was enough. As I grew stronger, I found myself looking back less with pain and more with clarity. For so long, I had internalized my mother's criticisms, believing I was flawed, unlovable, never enough. Now I understood those lies were hers, not mine. Therapy helped me see her for what she truly was, a deeply broken woman who took her own unhappiness out on me. That didn't excuse her behavior, but it helped me let go of the anger that weighed me down. I started setting boundaries that weren't just about distance, but about emotional safety. I stopped answering her calls when they became cruel. I refused to engage in guilt trips or manipulation. And each time I stood my ground, I felt a little more free. The scars she left would never fully disappear, but I was learning to carry them without shame. Most importantly, I began dreaming again. Dreaming of a life where I could thrive, love, and be loved without strings attached. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was living. With every step forward, I felt more certain that my future was mine to shape, not dictated by fear or guilt. I started exploring new opportunities in my career, applying for positions that challenged me and excited me. I took classes for personal growth and learned to speak up for myself in meetings and relationships. I embraced hobbies I'd long neglected: painting, hiking, and even joining a book club. Little things, but they made a huge difference. Martin stayed in my past. While it was painful to lose him, I now understood that love isn't about sacrifice or doubt. It's about trust and mutual respect. And I deserved that. I surrounded myself with people who lifted me up, who celebrated my wins and supported my struggles without judgment. Most importantly, I chose to believe in myself. I learned that self-worth isn't a destination. It's a daily choice. And every day I chose me. Looking back, it feels like I lived two lives. One dictated by fear, guilt, and manipulation, and the other my true life, that I'm just beginning to live. I still have tough days. The wounds from my mother's control don't heal overnight. Therapy continues to be a lifeline, helping me untangle decades of confusion and pain. My mother? She's furious that I won't come back. She calls me ungrateful and selfish. But those words no longer hold power over me. I see her for who she is. A woman trapped in her own bitterness and regret. Me? I'm free. I'm learning to trust myself, to love myself, and to build a life that reflects my worth. I don't have Martin anymore, but I have something better now. Confidence in who I am, and hope for what I can become. To anyone out there trapped in a toxic relationship, know that freedom is possible, healing is possible, and you are worthy of love, respect, and happiness.